Welcome to the Journey to Happy podcast, where you get concrete tools for mindset work, my best tips for lowering your anxiety. And you also hear funny and encouraging stories from me and others who have stories to share. Around here, you'll discover the easy way to stop overthinking, to get rid of self doubt, and finally embrace a calmer, more confident you. I am Olga, your host, a former therapist, a life coach, wife, blissfully an IVF mother, and a coffee lover. I'm excited that you tune in today, and I'm honored to be on the journey with you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Journey to Happy podcast. Today, I am very excited actually to be with a special guest, Mary Wong, who is I know you, Mary, actually through your book. She's an author. She wrote Pathways to Pregnancy. And it's a book that came to me during my second round of IVF as I was sitting in a very isolating waiting room at the fertility clinic I was going to. And I saw your poster and it just spoke to me. And so I Googled it, I ordered it, I read it. By the end of the week, I had read your book. It was on my bedside table. And I have to say, it was pivotal in my opening of releasing control. Up until that moment, I had been such a control freak about my journey. And so your book came at a perfect time where I was able to release control and understand that there are many pathways to a pregnancy, and that I needed to really let go of that and just trust that pregnancy or motherhood would come to me if I was open to it in some way. Mary Wong is also acupuncturist. I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us more about all of what you do. But the part that why I wanted to invite you, not only the book, but also how holistic you are in your approach to fertility and how you offer a very different approach to medicine from your Chinese medicine background, and how you holistically look at the person as a whole and not just as, let me see what your ovaries and your hormones are doing, but you take a deep look at what your patients are going through. So I think I've said enough of why I'm so excited to have you in here. As always, I want to bring people, professionals that can help women in their journey to motherhood, whether that's their first baby or their second baby, to understand more about themselves and walk away from this podcast with something that they can put into practice or be inspired to do in their journey. Welcome, Mary. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about what you do and how did you even get into this?
Thank you so much for having me, Olga. And it was an honor to have you reach out to me. And so I love hearing that my book did make a difference. And, that is my goal, because I wrote it literally in the middle of the night for a year when my child was a toddler, and I had difficulties conceiving her. But let me just back up a wee bit and go back to my actual career. So I didn't, I came by Chinese medicine, honestly. And what that means is I was actually en route to becoming a Western medical doctor. My childhood dream had always been to go to medical school and then be a psychiatrist. Well, second year university. So you read this, like this is in the beginning of my book, but a little bit more in depth. And so second year university, in the summertime, my grandmother had been sick. She was in the hospital, and then they thought she had cancer. It wasn't cancer. They did a biopsy, and then they're like, you know what? She's 86. She's too old for surgery. Her kidneys are failing. She has 2 weeks to live. So we went, whoa, okay. And we thought, well, she's 86. She's had a nice long life. That's okay. We'll bring her home so that her last days are with us at home. And I am Chinese, and my family is Chinese. And I did not come from a Chinese medicine household, meaning, no Chinese medical physician. However, it was my older brother who says, Mary, we're Chinese. Maybe we should try Chinese medicine. And so back in the day when we had the yellow pages, I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like this.
Oh, I do. I don't know about the listeners, but I do.
So basically it's your information book. Now it's so easy. You just Google everything. But back in the day, it's like they call it, you do let your fingers do the walking. You find practitioners through that way. So we found one, and it was in downtown Toronto. We went through this, and my parents were in the restaurant business. So I had the privilege of taking her to deep Chinatown and going to this back office of a herbal store, and this old 80, well, he seemed like he was 80, this 80-year-old doctor would treat her. And I was so fascinated. And he was a physician from China who also practiced Chinese medicine. And well, within 3 months, I watched her progress, and she lived another 8 years beyond that. So so she died at 94, and that summer it was completely enlightening. And I thought, oh my gosh, there is just this big gap. And why did I not have the option? Like, why did we just pronounce her as good as dead? Right. And then meanwhile, there are possibilities, options. And so thankfully we did take it. And I thought, gosh, like, I want to be able to help provide access and fill in that gap between medicine. So obviously I was not in a place of, I don't dislike medicine, but I was disenchanted for a while. Right? Because it's like, oh my gosh, how come they missed this? And so what was really interesting for me, so I went straight into Chinese medicine after I graduated from biology at McMaster University. And then I did Chinese medicine school, and then I never looked back. But what was interesting in the beginning of my career and my whole time being was, we need to integrate Eastern and Western medicine. And I need to show Western doctors that we need to add in and fill in that gap. But what I did not know in my own personal journey was that I needed to also integrate
yourself.
So yes, because I was then, I always considered myself a naturalist. I never taken aspirin. I can literally count on one hand how many times I've taken a Tylenol in my life, literally. And I'm over 50. That's that. And so when I was myself confronted with fertility challenges, the thought was, oh my gosh. And having helped thousands of women and couples conceive, I thought, how could this happen to me? Because, I'm doing all the best that I can. I live my life so pure. I'm so healthy. Both my grandmothers had children naturally at 46. And
wow,
I didn't smoke or drink. Yeah, right. And so it was like, I was really humbled by this process because, like you and everyone else who have come across fertility, you don't think that you would have fertility challenges. You think that, well, in fact, especially because growing up, it's like the rule of thumb is don't get pregnant.
That's it. Right? Yeah.
So you get scared.
Get pregnant so fast. Be careful, right?
Yes, be careful. So when the time comes, then it should be easy. And certainly I had that mindset because, again, both my grandmothers were 46 having kids naturally. So I thought, like, I have no age limit. Well, the truth was that I had fluid-filled block fallopian tubes, which was irreversible, and meaning that no amount of relaxing could ever have my eggs and my husband's sperm meet. So it was truly a shock. And especially when we weren't getting pregnant, I thought for sure it was my husband. Like, I was convinced it was my husband because he was the drinking, and he didn't smoke, but like, he was European. So he loved his wine and his aperitif and then his wine with dinner. And so I thought perhaps, anyway, it turns out his sperm were like super stellar. I'm like, crap, it's me. So I had to, and what was so amazing, I haven't said this, but he didn't even say a word. He never, there was no blame, no shame. And if you read my book, so I hope whoever's watching, listening to this, will pick up my book. And I don't want to give everything away, that my story's in there along with 14 other stories. But in the end, like he was completely on board with whatever, and he did not go into the blame game, which was amazing. And the reason why I wrote this book is because, you know what, there is no shame. Like, we are human and things just happen. And so there, I don't want any blame. I don't want any negativity, because, you know, it's easy to go there. Like, when you have a failed IVF cycle, when you have that negative pregnancy on that pee stick, right? The automatic is, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me?
I'm failing. I had a very long struggle with infertility. It was unexplained for most of our journey. Just yesterday, I found an ultrasound that says I have endometriosis. So I'm like, there you go. There is some answers, but it was never captured before now. I'm trying
Right.
for a second child, and it was
Yes.
never ever captured. So I don't know if it was not there before and now it is, but I remember having an incredible sadness in my heart every failed attempt. I don't know if you have encountered this. In my practice, I encountered that not only myself, but the women I'm coaching are type A personalities. You work hard, you get results, you enjoy the results. And infertility challenged that aspect of my personality because I work hard, I did the homework, I ate the foods, I took the vitamins, and I was still not getting pregnant. And it wasn't until I watched Michelle Obama actually talk about her infertility that she said, I felt inadequate. And I was
Yes.
like, that's the feeling. That's it. The sadness was, I am inadequate. I'm not doing what I thought I was going to be able to do. And what I think every woman does, right? Like, we just assume that fertility is inherent and like every single one of us will be able to, like your grandmas, bring to life children at the age of 46 or any age. And certainly we don't grow up thinking this might be a problem and it's not your problem. I think that I laugh when you said it definitely has to be my husband, because that was also my thought. I'm like, I am the healthiest person you ever have met. For sure has to be Chris. Like, it's gotta be him. He's the one who's got, he grew up in Canada and he's done all the things that Canadians have done while being teenagers. I grew up in South America. We were just like dancing at parties, having fun.
Right.
Um, and so, anyways, I definitely think that that's part of the journey to blame something, because I feel that if we had something to blame, we had a solution. We're always looking for that solution. If we know what the problem is, who the problem is, then we can um, dive in to that solution. In my case, we don't explain. There was never a solution. There was never an identified problem that we both could say, oh, okay, so this is what you do for that. I remember seeing an acupuncturist throughout. I'm a big fan of acupuncture. Personally, nothing calmed me down more than acupuncture in my journey. I can't, and you can talk about this. I can't link acupuncture to more eggs or better quality eggs or a pregnancy even, but I can 100% say I will walk out of those appointments feeling calm, grounded, and ready to take it on all over again.
So that's really great that you say this. So thank you for that. And so, okay, so we're diverging, but it's all, you know, it's all part of the same picture. So when it comes to acupuncture, so here's the deal. Acupuncture does not increase your number of eggs. Like, what you have is what you have. However, there's more and more research pointing to that the more you do acupuncture prior to trying to conceive, the likelihood of better um, egg quality is potentially optimized. And here's why. We know what, with acupuncture, we literally increase the blood volume to the ovaries and the reproductive organs in general. And when you do that, you're bringing in oxygenation, you're bringing in nutrients and taking away debris. And, you know, like you're talking about endometriosis, so it can help decrease inflammation, which that's part of endometriosis. It may also help decrease adhesions, soften adhesions that may also be there through endometriosis. And, but you know what? Depending on the severity and depending on each individual case, sometimes it requires, you know, multiple intervention, right? Hence pathways to pregnancy. There's not just one way, right? So with the acupuncture, of course I'm biased, but you know, I as I told you earlier, I didn't come through born into acupuncture, I learned about it and I was skeptical as anyone. And then I went in and it's like, oh my gosh, like how miraculous is this? So when you're speaking to the whole relaxation response, here's the other piece we know in research. There is some research that will say stress impacts fertility negatively. And then you'll have another research that says stress doesn't impact fertility. So the truth is, it's not about the stress itself. It's about our stress response.
Right.
And so we know acupuncture helps to decrease and mitigate the stress response. And if we mitigate that stress response, we're actually firing up better the autonomic nervous system. It's called the parasympathetic nervous system. And when we impact that, that's going to help the hypothalamus connect with the pituitary, which connects with the ovaries. So it helps with the hormonal alignment, right? And so is it like the panacea of all things? For some, but for the most part, there's just so many complicated pieces. So acupuncture would be one part. Chinese herbal medicine would be another part. The way you're eating is another part. The way you're decreasing your stress is another part. The way you move is another part, or lack of, right? So all those things, and in the relationship, how you be with your partner, if you have a partner, how you be with others in life, if you're a single person in general, right? All that is paramount to look at, because the thing with fertility, and you already said this earlier, like when it's not a job, it's not a project, it's not something to get towards, it's not a goal. And it's tough because as type A women that are driven, everything we are taught that we work our lives and we do our lives by achievement, and it's a goal-driven process.
Something that you can show, right? Like,
yes,
this is what I've
yes,
accomplished. Look, all my trophies.
right. And when it comes to baby making, it's in fact the opposite of that. And I say this in my book too, it's like, people think of infertility or fertility challenges, which is what I prefer to say. We look at it as though it's this difficult, treacherous mountain to climb. And, the journey is difficult, I'm not going to lie. But however, instead of looking, and I invite you to look at your journey not as this treacherous mountain to climb. It's really more of an inside job. And it's about allowing yourself to be that valley to receive life. And when you're being that valley, focusing more on how we be than what we do. And that's not to say we stop doing.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying. It's how we're doing it and how we're being as we do. That's the more critical piece. And, and this is where you hear, oh, this person actually went away on holidays and then they actually conceived. Or I can't tell you, I have tons of patients. One woman, she has had her baby now, but when we were seeing her, I just said, oh my gosh, you're so intense. She was so driven, and nothing anybody could say to her could stop her from being so driven, like obsessed 24/7. And right. So it's like, I get that. And we want to honor who we are. And simultaneously, can we give ourselves like a little mental, emotional break? Like, can we just, even for like 2 minutes at a time, for Pete's sakes, 2 minutes an hour, please. Like, that's like, just give yourself a break. Right. Because however we have that kind of strong worry and anxiety and inadequacy that we feel really can create an imprinting in how we communicate with our cells in the body. And our egg cells are the largest cells in the body. Like, it literally can impact our DNA. And so to be either expressed or not expressed. So consider that sometimes, and it's something to fault. It's just something to explore, to be a little different.
Observe almost.
Yes.
I can relate to that woman. I joke around having gone crazy, but really, I think that my intensity would have been at like I owned this success so much, or lack of, that I thought there's got to be another thing that I can do. And I am, you know this, but I'm a mindfulness teacher and I have been teaching mindfulness for 16 years. And I laugh when you said, oh, I realized I had to integrate it myself, because the same happened to me. I became mentored into mindfulness as a clinician to help my clients. I was working with addictions at the time, and so I was trying to implement it. And it wasn't until I faced infertility, so maybe 6 years into me practicing and teaching and reading all about mindfulness, that I realized, holy crap, I've been learning these all along so that I could save me from me. And
Yes.
that integration, I can say that, like, I had to struggle. I had to be in the middle of, like, why is this happening? Like, what do I need to learn to step back and begin to observe the approach that I was having to my health? And it wasn't holistic, and it was punitive, and it was very strict, and it was highly intense. And I say it saves me always to be so stubborn, because that's why I have a son today. I kept going. But it was that fine balance between, uh, like you said, not stop doing, but also embracing the being, the realizing that there was nothing that I could do or not do in terms of, like, like who I was as a human to deserve motherhood. Because I think we go down the path of, like, but I'm deserving of this. I'm a good human. Why am I not? And so we
Yes.
we default to more doing when we're already exhausted and stretching ourselves to such a thin places, that we forget that the being is, it's so much more collective. And it's a foreign concept. I get it. My clients are like, what do you mean by just be more? Like, what does that
Yes.
mean?
So
Um,
true. Because of course, like, when you're have a life of, we're knowledge-based society. It's kind of like, oh, the more we know and the more we do, then we'll get what we want. And again, as I said, and as we are both alluding to, it's like, it's not necessarily just in the way of doing that's going to get you places in this. It's like our bodies align when we're in a more calm state. And again, you don't need to be like a Buddhist monk and that kind
but
of
that no.
calm,
Mhm.
right? But even like by 5%, it's like on that trajectory, that shift on this slightly different path, little divergent path. It's like the body goes, uh-huh, right? I can do this. So back to this woman that I wanted to share. So she was told she had premature ovarian failure. She was still getting her periods, but a lot of times she was anovulatory. We were working with her. Cycles looked better, menstruation, everything looked better. She felt a little better, but she was still on this mission. I said, you know what? You just need time out. I said, you need to take some time away. Oh, but then how about acupuncture? I'm like, you know what? That's great. But I just think you need a complete break from everything. So she wanted to, and her passion was travel. And so she went to, and she actually did go to India. So, not everybody does this, but she did. And she did like a retreat in India, a meditation retreat. And she came back and we were chatting and she's like, oh, I feel like a whole new person. I rejuvenated. And I said, yes, this is exactly what you need. And this is how you need to live your life. I said, it's not about focusing on the baby. In fact, focusing on the baby, it's kind of like if you want to boil water in a pot, like it's not going to boil faster if you watch it, right? Walk away. So,
I love
and
that analogy.
so she walked away, and I got in touch with her like a year down the road, and she's like, oh my gosh, how timely. I just got pregnant naturally, right? Without doing anything. And she had done the IVFs, right? She had been at the clinics. And so again, some could hear this as a great source of inspiration, but I also hear that some people will say, well, good for her, but it won't happen to me,
Right. Yeah,
right?
the relief isn't there also for some people.
Yeah, and that's okay too. But because I've literally seen thousands and thousands of people, and I what keeps me going. And when, by the way, it took us 6 years to have my daughter in front of us. And what kept me going was my patience, because I literally watched everybody in their depths of despair. Every time they come in, they're like, wow. And and what gave me hope and what inspires them is my confidence in that, you'll get through this one way, shape, or form. And I felt so privileged because even as I was going through it. And when I finally shared my journey with my patients, they were always in awe and say, wow, how could you do that? How can you treat other people suffering like this when you're suffering yourself? I said, you know what? It's completely the opposite, because every person that comes in is an inspiration, because they would provide, I would watch them transform and have the child of their dreams one way or another. And sometimes it wasn't like through their belly, sometimes it was adoption. Sometimes it was actually, you know what, I'm complete, I'm going to be child free. Most of them, one way or another, had a pregnancy through their belly or surrogacy, right? But most of the time, belly. But the whole point behind that is, like, I felt really privileged to watch them go through their journeys and watch them overcome whatever the challenges they were facing. So I was driven to share their stories. So initially I was like, oh, I should share my story. I said, no, you know what? This is a community. We need to collectively share how we overcame this adversity and how we grew as an opportunity to grow. And so that's why I wrote it in the middle of the night while my baby was a toddler. And, she would cry in the middle of the night here and there, and I would wake up and then I'd be like, bing, wide awake. And then I'd be driven to write. And so literally every night I was writing. And because it's like, and life would not be complete, kind of like my life would not have been complete having my child. My life would not have been complete if I had not written this book, because I thought, if I could just save and help one person transform their mindset around their capacity and transform their mindset about even their diagnosis. So whether it is unexplained, or endometriosis, or PCOS, or challenge of same sex, or single woman, or advanced maternal age, or premature ovarian failure, or even just the word being utilized, failed cycle, right? All those things, we need to shift away from those words and not believe them like it's God's words. It's not the
I,
truth.
amen to everything you've said. And I love that you use the word mindset. I no longer do regular therapy I am a former therapist officially. And this is my focus is mindset. Exactly what you described. I realized that why I went through those 5 years, and I'm still sane and hopeful and positive, and even just got myself through a fifth IVF. And I'm happy to report I have a baby girl in the freezer waiting to be
Oh,
transferred.
great.
The process of transferring this little embryo into my body, I can always rely back on my mindset as the thing that has taken me out of the dark. And so I think that it is so unspoken in this fertility journey that I became highly passionate to talk about mindset, because it's a deal breaker. You could have all of the help, all of the support around you. If your mind is working against you, if you're telling yourself, like I had a very strong, mean voice in my head, Mary. I had convinced myself that I was paying a karma from a past life, because obviously I was a good human in this life. That
Right.
if I ever did become a mom, I would probably be a bad mom. And so life was protecting these future children from an awful mom. I had built up this whole story about why I wasn't a mom, since I couldn't explain it with science. And it was all in my head. It was all of my thoughts that were really scaring me and paralyzing me towards just being and accepting that my journey may take longer, but that I was still going to grow a baby. And I have to say, it was a Chinese medicine practitioner who said to me these words that I'll never forget. And when my mindset began to change, he said to me, Olga, I want you to think of this journey as your process to becoming a healthier, stronger woman. So that one day, when you're holding this baby, and like he just put his arms as if I was holding a baby, when you're holding your baby and you're looking down, you can proudly tell this child, you are lucky you got the best version of me. I
Yeah.
just walked through these steps all the way to you, while shedding skin that I needed to shed, and just becoming this human who you were to meet. Needless to say, I was crying. I was like, I visualized it. I'm like, yes, I can see this happening. I will be holding my baby and I will be saying, oh my God, thank you. This process has made me a better human. And I am forever thankful to people like yourself for writing your story, for writing the story of 14 other women would allow us to see the light at the end of the tunnel in moments of darkness, when our own mind is playing tricks on us and saying like, this will never happen to you. Good for them, but this is you now. When you're using other people's stories not as inspiration, like you said, but as evidence of what's not happening to you in your life, which is where my mind was at way back then. So
Yes.
um, I am just very curious, how have you managed to mitigate the gap between, like, I know you work closely with my doctor, for example, who I love him because of his openness to holistic approach. He was the first one to be like, okay, so are you meditating? Good. um, how have you navigated that through, and how do you currently support patients who might be in Toronto, or I'm in Ottawa, but my treatments are in Toronto? How are you supporting and mitigating these Western and Chinese holistic approach all together, so that doctors cooperate with you, and that the patient gets the best of both worlds?
That's a really, really great question, because here's the thing. Not every acupuncturist is going to be having that capacity to deal with reproductive endocrinology. So I actually train in
Agreed.
reproductive endocrinology as well. And so I actually belong to an association. It's called the American Board of Oriental Reproductive Medicine. And one of the board members is actually a reproductive endocrinologist in the US. So we do know, short of doing the surgeries and all that stuff, we actually know all that's happening at the fertility clinic. And I have the insight, also being a former person, having gone through IVF, right? So again, I come by it honestly. So our staff, I have three other associates that does Chinese medicine. My naturopathic doctor also, she herself went through IVF and she had PCOS. Well, has PCOS, and
Mhm.
she has two beautiful children. And again, you know, if you're looking for a TCM practitioner, you might want to find someone that has that knowledge. And if not, at least a really good one that can work with fertility, coming from a Chinese medicine perspective. And then you could actually reach out to our office, and we do virtual consultations. So we also even help other practitioners too, right? So there is a liaison that way. And in terms of, at least I'll speak for myself, most of the clinics in Canada know who I am, because I actually did some talks for the Canadian Fertility Andrology Society. And so there's few and far between, unfortunately, in Canada that are that well integrated. So I'm not sure where your sources of the people are that listen to your podcast, but for sure in the UK, and for sure other places in Europe and in the US, there's a lot of integration. And again, it depends on the doctor. So even within the clinic that you're at, so we won't name names, but not like all of them are as open as your doctor. Some of them are tolerant of integrative medicine, and I do call it integrative medicine. And Dr. Magarelli in the US, who's part of the board member, I love what he says. He actually calls this integrative medicine between the East and West. He says it's actually one medicine, which I love, right? Because it's like, why are we separating it out? It really should be part of one system where we communicate. There's no, so back to the question is like, well, how can we integrate it and not feel weird about it? Because sometimes the thought is, oh, if I do IVF, maybe I can't do Chinese medicine. But really, it's not mutually exclusive. In China, there's like in the hospital wings, there's one hospital wing for Chinese medicine, one that's Western. So it's fully integrated. And if you are doing IUR or IVF and it's medicated, well, guess what? The doctors, what their concern is, they want to increase the number of eggs. It does not touch egg quality. And if you didn't hear this from the beginning, wind back to the beginning, because I talked about how, egg quality potentially can be impacted through doing successive treatments. And um, people know of acupuncture for pre and post embryo transfers. And really, to me, yes, it's great, but I don't think it's sufficient. When you're doing pre and post embryo transfer treatments, you're only looking at the uterine lining. And even then, that's just two treatments. When you water and want a plant to grow in the garden, do you just water it once and expect it to grow?
Mhm. No.
No. So, how can you expect your body, like your uterine lining is the earth for implantation. So why are we not taking care of it? Why are we only doing it last minute? And when we look at egg quality, like if we want to do acupuncture before your egg retrieval or when you're trying to conceive, the one treatment that you get actually impacts even 3, 4 months from now. The reason being is that follicular genesis, the sperm, the germ cell that becomes that ovulating egg at ovulation, that process is at least 120 days. And that germ cell actually has been sitting there, well, your whole life. You're born with all the eggs you have, right? It doesn't start to come out into fruition until like 120 days prior to ovulation. But so really like 3, 4 months out, that would be the most ideal to start off, even really like 6 months. But most people come to us very last minute. And that's okay too, because if it doesn't work out in this cycle, and we'll, kind of like juicing you up for the 11th hour, and that's fine and that's great. But if that cycle doesn't work, that doesn't mean that all is lost. We're actually impacting the ones coming in. So how great is that?
And I think this is something that I remember struggling with. My naturopath would be like, take the supplements at least 6 months. And in my head, it's like, are you crazy? Waiting 6 more months because the waiting has been so long. But I do want to say to anybody listening to this, ah, study is so much better than like if you take your time to do this to support yourself with the time that it takes to support yourself. Yes, you might be waiting in the long term another 3 months or 6 months, but that process will be so much more in your favor when you have taken the time to support your body in. And so the theme I think of what we're being saying is there is so much to gain from practicing patience throughout this whole journey, to trust the process and then to take the time that it takes, to not rush it. In mindfulness, we say we never rush the process of a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. We just know it's going to become a butterfly. We all, sometimes it's 2 years long, that process. And we just,
Yes.
nobody tries to rush it because what if it doesn't become a butterfly? We just know that caterpillar will eventually fly and be a butterfly. And so it's the self-induced timelines I think that we create makes us skip very important steps. So if anybody listening to this is not struggling with infertility, is attempting to become pregnant, give yourself that time. Go see the acupuncturist, naturopath. Like I had a whole team around me, and
Yes.
and,
It
I-
takes
and
a team.
and I didn't land there right away. It had been 2 years of trying naturally, but I had a team. I still have a team, and I can't imagine doing it any other way. Like everybody offers a different piece of the puzzle, and
Yes.
like at the end, I just wanted to have a complete puzzle, so I didn't want to be missing pieces here and there. And every practitioner brings something in, and I'm so happy that more and more we're seeing Western medicine doctors opening up to the holistic approach, understanding that there is not a one way, one answer
Yes.
to everybody. It could
So
be
I would like to just butt in because I have short-term memory and I'll forget this piece. So you were just talking about, those women that are one day maybe going to try to conceive, right? And I don't want to lose sight of that, because what I don't want for you that are in that camp, I don't want you to walk away going, oh my gosh, I'm going to have fertility challenges.
exactly.
Well, the truth is, if it's 1 in 6, that means 5 out of 6, you're good. Having said that, if you take the time to do the work now, perhaps you'll not, even if you start out as the 1 in 6, perhaps you'll actually be that 5 in 6 because you've taken the time. You get off the pill, you regulate your cycle. You actually, if you have acne, if you have irregular cycles, take care of it now through other ways, right? If you're, because a lot of women actually go on the birth control to quick fix treat things, right? So like acne is a big one, and beyond birth control, right? So there's also, people that are not ovulating, people that are having really long cycles, or people that are having painful cycles. So the truth is the birth control pill works beautifully to mitigate all those symptoms, but you're not dealing with the underlying issue. And the whole point in this exercise, what we're talking and addressing is it's not just an outside job. We don't blame, we don't look outside and just do more, right? It's also an inside job. How can we get healthier? What can I do? What can I be responsible for so that I can be the best version of me right now? Right. So the other thing that is there for people that want to conceive in the future is they look at well, some workplaces like Google, for example, they'll and a lot of media now is talking about egg freezing. And I just cringe. I cringe because it's almost sold, or at least the media puts it out there like it's a complete, it's a insurance, a guaranteed insurance. But the truth is, and you've done IVF, the truth is it's not a guarantee at all.
Nope.
And the other thing is, when you're sold this, and they used to do like an egg freezing party where you go in and they kind of like sign you up. And the truth is about that is it's not like you literally, okay, today, oh, you know what? I have a free time on Friday, so I'm going to go get my eggs pulled out. It's not like that. It's not like you just go in and then you take them out. It's actually a process. It's like 2-3 months. They have to do like cycle monitoring. They do all these testing, and then you do these stimulation drugs. Some people, I don't know if you had it, but some people don't do well on the drugs. Well, a lot of people don't do so great. It's not like, it's not that walk in the park. It's not that easy, right?
No. It's very intrusive. And I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that it's the only venue for me to have children, I would say try everything else before.
Yeah.
And I never even heard of these egg retrieval parties or egg freezing parties. And that goes against exactly what we've been saying, this holistic approach to like, it's so much more than just your egg. And they could retrieve your eggs, and guess what? They could not fertilize because they were not good quality eggs. And so then what? You're feeling like, oh, I've got my eggs in the bank, I'm good. Yes. Well, hold on. Until you try to fertilize them, until they grow to 6 days, you still have nothing.
That's right. And again, they're like, oh yeah. And here's the thing. So some women, they'll go through the IVF retrieval process, and they'll get like 6 or 8 or 9 or 10. And I'm cringing again because I'm like, ooh, the stats are that like you have to have at least 21, right? And maybe even closer to 30. And it depends on the age. And the one thing is what's so interesting is that the egg cell, it's one cell. So it's actually got a lot of water, a lot of fluid, versus if you do an egg retrieval and then you'd fertilize it and you have an embryo. The embryo is a more of a mass. It's about 300 cells. And so it's more, there's more integrity. So it's easier to freeze and thaw. So even though they say, oh, the vitrification, which is easiest thing, is it's called flash freezing. So now we've got this new process, it's flash freezing, and it does better. Well, it does better, but it's also not a guarantee. So I've witnessed a woman that was in New York working, high-powered woman, and she did egg freezing. She says, yes, I've got 21 in the bank, so I'm good. So she was I think she was 37 when she froze, and then at 44 she's, some senior VP, and she finally got married and settled down. She's like, you know what? I'm not proving myself anymore. I'm ready to have a kid. Not a baby. 21 eggs. Nothing. Got nothing. So then she was left with, holy crap, I'm like in perimenopause, and now what? So I don't want people to go into this kind of place thinking that it's, I just bank them and then I forget about it, and then it might be too late, right? Because that's a reality too.
It is a reality. And Mary, you bring to a subject that I often coach women through, which is that what happens to those numbers. And I'll be curious to hear your view. I keep referring them back to natural selection, and how, as deceiving as it might be to have 21 eggs, that doesn't mean that you're going to have 21 children. And that the nature of those 21 eggs will be to reduce to 1 or 2, because in reality, like, only the best wins, right? And like, the fact that you and I have come through this world means like we were the selected ones. There is natural selection that I think women tend to forget about when we start this journey of IVF. We become so focused on numbers, and that's something that I had to work through. I have really low egg reserve, and so I never produce more than two follicles, even 4 follicles. And my doctor, who was like thinking outside the box, he was still willing to work with me because he thought I had a chance. And thank God he did, because I wouldn't have a son right now if he
Yes.
hadn't, my son was one follicle.
Yes.
And I said, look, if
Yes.
you're taking that follicle out, we'll figure out if there's an egg, and we're gonna figure it out if there's a baby in that egg. And so, what do you like? What's your approach to these losses? Because women go from like 21 thinking, okay, I'm gonna have 5, and in my mind, like we've stepped away from reality at that point. It's any given day that you're trying to have a baby, any given month, you're not aiming for 5, you're aiming for 1 child. And I mean, maybe some of us want twins because we've been waiting for so long. We're like, give me 2 at once. But the reality is that there is going to be these
attrition rate. Yes.
Yes. Filtering.
So, okay, let me jump right in. And I'm going to come at it from both angles. So some women just produce a hell of a lot. And then you and I produce very little. So at the end of the day, you hit the nail on the head. It's not about the number. It's about the quality. So I don't care if you produce 20 or 2. It's like the quality is what counts. So we want to work on the energy. So the energy of the cell is the most important, that drives the cellular division. And so what do I mean by that? So everybody that is trying to conceive is taking CoQ10. Why? Because it's considered an antioxidant. And why? Because we want to help the mitochondria in your cell, which is the fuel to power cellular divisions. That needs to be high so that you don't cause chromosomal issues, right? So a person with PCOS is known to have lots of numbers, lots of follicles.
Right, lots of eggs, yeah.
Right. And so the problem is, it's like, okay, well, you might have lots, but maybe it's a little shoddy. So if there is only so much gas in the tank, but we have to divide the gas into like 20 tanks, you're not going to be able to pull any of them out of the driveway. So we want to focus more on how do we increase that gas with what we've got. And maybe it's not about pulling out 20. And, now, in fact, in the years that I've seen it, there is different strategy for egg retrievals now. Before, it used to be the more the better. And even doctors now know, oh, you know what, if you have PCOS, actually, I'm not going to try to pull out 20 or 30 that you have there. Let's just get 8 or 10, right? So it's all about the quality. And on the other opposite end of the spectrum, you got your pregnancy and had your baby with that one follicle, and the egg lives inside the follicle, for those that do not know the terminologies. And so what's important about that is that there's this criteria that doctors now always use, which is the AMH, anti-Müllerian hormone. And when they check that out, if it's way too high, likely PCOS, or if it's way too low, they'll say, oh my gosh, premature ovarian reserve. And
I'm in that club.
Yeah, well, but the truth is, low AMH has nothing to do with quality. And so I want you guys to hear this. AMH, low AMH does not equate to low quality. You want me to say it again? Not equal to low quality. And here's why. Low AMH means that for fertility clinics, there's not that much they can do for you, because their number one goal is to increase your number of follicles to try to pull them out so that you can retrieve and do IVF. So in fact, people with low AMH is not actually the best candidate. So going back to my story of that woman who actually was told she had premature ovarian failure and that she was going to go into menopause, she had an AMH of 0.0, right? She had a baby after. So that doesn't mean that she had 0 eggs, and that didn't mean that she has nothing. Right?
I want everybody to hear this, because I was just having a conversation last night with a woman who was turned away by her fertility clinic because of low AMH. And I was like, but you had one follicle growing? Go for it. We're not going for, at least I now know that for myself. I'm not going for quantity. This last IVF, I said to my doctor, I need 1 follicle, I need 1 baby, let's do it. This is news to me, and it's brightening up my day to hear that low AMH doesn't equal lower quality. That was my understanding until today. So that's Really possible.
Well, you know what? I did an interview with Dr. Hannum. So if you find it through Meet
Yeah.
Mary Wong on my YouTube channel, it's the latest one with him because I interviewed him, I think, twice. But he actually said it because I wanted to say that because we were more talking about the high AMH, about PCOS, but I brought in the low AMH and he actually said it too. So I loved hearing it from him directly. But because the truth, again, the truth is that they just can't do as much with you through a low AMH. And by the way, how about all those women that get pregnant naturally? They were never tested for their AMH.
No.
How many of those had low AMH as a starting point? Right? So it's not equal to quality. And so, but that's my whole point about, do not define yourself through the tests that you have, the results that you get, and the actual diagnosis that you get. Because that's just story based. That's not necessarily the truth. Evidence is not reality. Evidence is not the truth. Evidence is a story that we make up and we live into it like it's a truth. And we base it on other people's stories, but you are an individual. Are you following me? Am I being too complicated?
No. This is amazing. And it's exactly what I've experienced up until now, personally. And what I would love for every woman to think, we're only using evidence to prove the thoughts that we have, which may be inaccurate. You may be carrying a thought that says, I am not fertile and I'm not going to have an easy time having children. And then you find evidence that makes you live through that reality, that you're bringing in other people's stories to feel through the same filters. But I think what I would like to for listeners to grab from this conversation, you're listening to two practitioners who have struggled themselves with infertility. We both have low. I had 1.9 was my last AMH taken 2 months ago as I was going to try for my last IVF, and I almost grabbed that number and told myself it's an impossible. Like, this is a defeat purpose. My doctor has said we'd like to see it minimally at a 4. It was at a 6 when I had my son. And when I saw 1.9, I'm like, wow, impossible. And look, I've got
No,
a healthy female embryo
exactly.
in the freezer. So it's so important that we don't grab a doctor's opinion as the law, as your law, that we don't grab a diagnosis as like a definition of your possibilities, but that you get to choose what set of beliefs you want to have around that story that's been formed so that you own that story. And in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion, find the practitioners that help you in the rebuilding of your story, that they believe in your ability to co-create essentially what you're here
Yes.
to do. Like I don't know. I mean, that's been my experience. I co-created what I've got going on in my life. I've been
Love
an
it.
active
Very
participant.
well put. I like that. And I love listening to other people's perspectives because how people articulate may be different than your own. So, we have you and I here. And so maybe some of the words didn't resonate with me or to you, but maybe, Olga, how she said it is like, oh yeah, that's bang on. Right. So it's like, however it hits home, that's what makes a difference for you. And like, I don't believe that, I went on City Line and with Tracy Moore on the Mother's Day episode, and it was for a Mother's Day special. And I said, you know what? I get that Mother's Day is a celebration, but I need to come on air and express and acknowledge all the women suffering because for many, it's not a celebratory time. It's actually a trigger for sadness. And I actually went on and I said, listen, I don't believe in the word infertility. I think it's a transient moment in time. And I also believe that we have a capacity for change. And I said what I said, and I finished off lots of good positive vibes. But within an hour, I had one lady that emailed me and she says, how dare you say this to me? How dare you go on national television and tell me that infertility is not a permanent place to be? And she says, I had a stillbirth 35 years ago, and that was the worst day of my life. And so, how dare you go on national television and tell me it's not permanent? Because for me, it's permanent. So I thought about it, and my heart just really was broken for her. And what was was that she allowed herself to stay in that place of permanence. Because as I said at the very beginning, I don't believe that, being fertile is equated to just having a baby come out of your belly. So in her case, the choice could have been, you know what? I can be fertile in my life. And in fact, that's what I always say to people. When you come to see me, it's not about getting that baby in the belly. It's like, let's have you mother yourself first. You are mother, own it, and mother yourself first. And you could be a mother to your community, to other children. I have a lady behind us. She doesn't have kids, but she has fostered over 10 dogs. She is a mother. She is an earthly mother. There are mothers of the earth that are environmentally conscious. Right. So I stand by that. So, for those of you that are in that camp, oh my gosh. And I wrote back, the only thing I said, I do not apologize for saying that infertility is not a permanent place to be. I believe that still. What I will say is that I am so sorry. No one should have to have stillbirth. I could not imagine what it's like to have a stillbirth. And yet we see so many women go on to have a child after a stillbirth.
I support women with stillbirth and pregnancy after a stillbirth. And I see the difference between those who go on to a second pregnancy and those who don't, is the deciding that, well, grief will be forever in my life and I will be forever this angel's mom. They in the permanency of that loss and that feeling that will always be, there is a choice and there is a mindset around diving into love, to love deeper and greater,
Yes.
despite the fear and the loss, and that loss, that they choose to go through that second pregnancy with a lot of support, because it's triggering us as you may imagine,
yes,
to go through a second pregnancy. But I agree. I think the message in here for anybody listening is that you have resources internally to turn things that feel like a forever, like this has marked you. I think that maybe Mary, you and I would say infertility marked us. Like, I've never grown so much in such a short period of time. 5 years is a long period of time until I held my baby in my arms. But for a PhD in self-growth, that was a short period of time to just come in to learn so much about my human condition, about the things that were not necessary in my life, that I would never turn back and add into my life again. Like, there were stressors and a relationship with myself that I shed it, that it will no longer be a part of my existence because it wasn't helpful anyway. And so I feel that within the heaviness and the difficulties that we will experience emotionally and mentally and physically going through this journey, that we can still find a sense of responsibility to choose a different attitude. Yes. That's what I always tell my clients. We have we didn't choose infertility. Nobody wanted to be a plug. But once you're in it, what's your attitude going to be? What kind of member are you going to be? That's our choice.
One last thing, and because I love what you're saying here. And one of the things that I say is that, fertility challenges, by the way, you might notice I don't use the word infertility. I still don't believe in it, so I don't use it. So I call it fertility challenges. Dr. Tanya Wai calls it sub-fertility, but we don't like to use the word infertility. So we do not choose it. You're right. There's lots of things in life we don't choose. We don't, if you're coming from any kind of trauma, you don't choose that. We cannot have self-blame. So when they say, oh, whatever you experience, what challenges you have is a gift, I actually counter that. There is a gift. The gift is not the experience.
No.
The gift is what you choose it to be and what you choose to do because of the gift. So when the person says, oh, your infertility is a gift, it's like, no, that's actually inaccurate. So the gift is how you be, how you show up, how you rise above. And sometimes you don't think you can, but it's there. You have the perseverance and you don't even know the strength that you have until you actually go through it, right? Yeah. When you're in the depths of that darkness, you have that choice to come out of it. You keep going or you fall way down. And for most type A's, you just keep going.
Yep.
right?
But you let go of a whole bunch of things that your type A personality doesn't need and still gets
Yes.
places. Mary, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to be with my audience and for sharing you with me and us. It's been a gift. I could talk to you all day.
Yes, I have many stories to share. I was like, oh, I didn't tell you this, that, like all the audience would love to hear, I am sure. Because again, because the one thing we didn't go through was like, it's, fertility is not just linear. It's not, oh, every month passing by, your eggs are getting older. That again, you need to dispel that right off the bat. And so maybe that's another conversation we can have another time.
Oh my God, I'm in. Sign me up. I want to have
all
that.
Right.
And if people want to find you, go to your YouTube channel, to your website.
So yes, so you can find me on Meet Mary Wong YouTube channel, but you can also find me on meetmarywong.com, which is actually coming because it's normally something else right now. So just find me at my Alive Holistic Health Clinic. Actually, the easiest way is find me on Instagram, and then you'll have like through my link tree, all my links. Okay. So on my Instagram, it's Meet Mary Wong.
I will tag it to the show notes so people can go directly to that. That's how I found you on Instagram. I mean, I had read your book, but then I made the connection. I'm like, oh, this is it. And
awesome.
so I'm so happy that you were here with us. Thank you so much.